I was seeing the same patterns from a, let's say, relatively carefree state of mind. And that relatively carefree state of mind allowed me to, like say, flow in and out of my trades with an ease and effortlessness that I would not have been able to imagine beforehand. And then what happened is that I started making consistent money for my customers. And there's even, well, there's one really, as a matter of one really good story where, I mean, there are a lot of good stories that I can tell you about my customers at Merrill Lynch. But in one case, I inherited this guy who at the time was the head of the state of Illinois' mainframe computers, and he was from India. And he had put together his own trading program, and he was using the state computers to do it. And so, and he had an account, technically an account with Merrill Lynch, but wasn't funded because he'd lost all his money. But he still maintained the account. And so I inherited him as a customer, and he would call me every day. And he was just like, and all he would say to me is like, I'd pick up the phone. He wouldn't say, hi, how are you? He'd say, give me data. Like give me the high, low, and close. And, so we interacted like this for a long time. Well, he came up with his own day trading system that eventually, well, because he and I started working on it together. He had the internal program for it, but he didn't have any money management parameters for it. So after about 2 or 3 months of working with him on it, we came up with some really good money management parameters. And then all my customers started trading it, and we were making consistent money day after day, even to the point where Merrill Lynch was starting to take notice. Here all this whole customer, his customer base is making money, and he got to the point where he's thinking, okay, all these people are now deriving this benefit from my work. I should be able to do it too. And he talked his wife into letting him put $5,000 into his account to fund his account. Now, I didn't know what happened to him. Why? I mean, not like we had personal discussions, so I don't know why he didn't have any money in his account. The guy was a maniac. It was like he put the money in his account, and 2 days later it was all gone. It was like he'd call me up and he'd say, okay, do this. I said, well, wait a second. The system says to do this. He's like, no. I don't care what the system says. This is what's going to happen. He didn't follow any of his own rules. Now here we had a track record. We had a legitimate track record, bona fide, real money. Day after day. He gets a few bucks in his account, and it's like he thinks he knows where the market's going. Like I said, he was gone in 2 days, and that was it. It was all over with, because at that point, he was done. I didn't get the system because it was in his computer, mainframe computer at the state of Illinois, and had no more contact with him. And shortly after that, ended up getting fired from Merrill Lynch anyway, because there was one of these management consultants that came in from New York, and she was going around the office talking to all the different brokers because of whatever it was that they were trying to find out. And she got to me, and by that time I was already writing The Disciplined Trader. And I just I started very exciting to say, oh yeah, this is what I found out, and this is what I've learned. And her eyes lit up saying, this is exactly what we're looking for. And she was we talked for probably about an hour and a half, and she was all excited. And then she said, I got to go tell, well, I'm not going to say his name, the office manager, okay? And she walked away from me, walked over to the office manager. 10 minutes later, he came over and said, pack up your stuff and get out. Right then and there on the spot. Pack up your stuff and get out. So that's how I ended up actually being a trading coach, because by then, floor trade, because I'd made friends with floor traders. I was making friends to find out how they trade and that sort of thing. Well, they started coming to me for advice, even while I was at Merrill Lynch. And because it's a pretty small community, the word gets around, especially when people are really genuinely helped with the kind of advice that you're giving them. And I'd helped several floor traders turn their trading around. And so what had happened is I started getting hired by clearing firms. What I mean by clearing firms is that to trade on the floor of an exchange, you have to clear your trades through a financial institution. And so, it's like these are traders just like you. They have their own account, but what they have to do is they have to clear their trades through, like I said, one of the major clearing firms at the exchange. Well, what would happen is this, that it isn't like this now, but back in the early 80s, or the mid 80s, clearing firms were in some ways like almost like family operations, where the people who owned the clearing firms, they knew all the floor traders, they were friends with them, they partied together, Christmases and holidays and that sort of thing. And so if one of the floor traders would go debit, you know what I mean by go debit? In other words, you have to have a positive balance in your account. Well, the problem with floor trading is that not today, but back then, when you traded on the floor, you had to record your trades on a trading card. So in other words, if you and I are entering into a trade where I'm going long and you're going short, what I would do is that we would take our badge, like the acronym of our badge, and our clearinghouse number, record it on this card, and how many contracts we traded. Let's say you're short 10 and I'm long 10, and the price that we traded them at. Well, those cards didn't have to be turned in until the end of the day. And then they'd all get reconciled, meaning that between all the different trades and all the traders from all the different clearing firms, this would all go into a central clearing operation to find out which trades were, to find out who's long and who's short, how much money's coming out of whose account, and whether or not they were what are called out trades, meaning that you thought I said 10, and I thought we were doing it for 100. Okay, so now we've got a discrepancy of 90 trades. These were called out trades that had to be reconciled before the open of the next day, which is a whole nother world. We're not going to get into it. All I'm saying is that it would not be unusual for guys to overtrade during the day, and the clearing firm wouldn't even find out about it until the end of the day. For an example, one of the guys I worked with at Merrill Lynch, eventually he was a mathematics professor. He's a really nice guy. Should not have been a trader at all. Had absolutely, anyway, and P's at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and he was a one-lot trader, meaning, just traded one contract, one in and out, one contract, and eventually the forces inside of him were building up where he's frustrated with the fact that he can't make a living at it, he's just eking it out, where one day he snapped, and this one-lot trader almost took down the clearing firm. In other words, he's got like several thousand S&Ps on, several thousand contracts where other guys are into those trades, and the market's going against them. So he almost took down a clearing firm just by himself. So what would happen is that because guys would go debit, meaning they end up in the day lost, maybe they're down $25,000 or $50,000 or $100,000. The guy that owns the clearing firm doesn't want to say, hey, you can't trade until you pay this off. They'd want to let him to go back into the pit to work it down. Well, after, you got 4 or 5 of these troublesome, or 15 of these troublesome traders that are constantly running debits, you start to get a little worried. And so what they did is they hired me to work with these guys. Most of the information, most of the insight, let's say, that you'll find in the disciplined trader and trading in the zone came from me working with these floor traders on a daily basis. And I'm laughing because obviously it was quite a trip working with these guys, because they are not like you and me. that's really about the best way I can describe it without going into a lot of detail. They're not like you and me. So anyway, this is kind of maybe a long drawn out introduction to the fact that what we're talking about here is that you guys have a really wonderful trading methodology where there is an enormous amount of potential for you to be able to make a consistent income from being able to take full advantage of the potential that this trading methodology offers you. But I would say that it wouldn't be unfair for me to say that there's probably what I'm going to call the profit gap. The gap between the potential and your bottom line results. This is the potential, and this is your bottom line results. Most people think that when they realize that this gap exists, that somehow learning more about the markets is what's going to fill it. And what you're here today to learn is that that is categorically not the case. You have to learn more about yourself and how you interact with your trading platform and the market to be able to fill this gap. There are psychological skills involved. And then when I talk about psychological skills, do anybody think of an example of a psychological skill? This is difficult. I don't think, I'm not saying that you should have the answer, but can you think of an analogy in maybe in other parts of the way we express ourselves that you can think of what would be an example of a psychological skill?
Anger management.
Anger management? Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay. What about a situation, and anybody watch Wimbledon here lately? Just it was on? I'm not a big tennis fan, but I just happened to be watching it. And because I knew that I was doing this workshop here, this is something that really sticks in my mind. What's the difference between let's say, here, this is even a better example. What's the difference between a pro basketball player who can stand at the free throw line and hit 20 in a row, even 30 in a row, where the thing about the variables are fixed. The line and the basket and the distances, they're all fixed. And they've got the motor skills to be able to hit, like I said, 10, 15, 20 in a row. But they get into a situation where there's 1 second left and the score is tied and this basket is going to win the game and he chokes. That's a cycle. The guy that doesn't choke has a psychological skill that the other one doesn't. Trading without fear is a psychological skill. It is a skill that the professionals have acquired and they have evolved beyond the typical mindset or the kind of mindset that the typical trader operates out of. So when we're talking about trading or thinking like a pro, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that you will evolve beyond the typical mindset so that you can take full advantage. This represents, if this line represents potential, that you can take the potential of your methodology so that you can take full advantage of your methodology. Because it has to do with your state of mind. In this section, we're going to cover the underlying nature of the mental skills that you're going to be learning. And then at the end of the section, I'm going to put these skills within the context of 3 developmental modes that you're going to eventually learn to trade in, which would be first the mechanical mode, then the subjective mode, and then the intuitive. Everybody kind of have a good idea where we're going today? Maybe a little bit better of an idea than when you kind of walked in here? Yeah? Okay? So anyway, what I want to do is let's just go through and take a little bit of an attitude survey here, kind of get an idea where you're at. There are no right or wrong answers here. It's just a matter of what you believe about the nature of trading. So if we just kind of making money as a trader is primarily a function of analysis. Who would agree with that? Everyone, come raise your hands. It's all right. Raise your hands. So you're telling me that only a few people would agree? Part of it? Okay. Okay. I often find myself thinking there must be a way to trade without having to take a loss. Come on, be honest. Come on. Oh, yeah, let's say I find myself thinking that there must be a way to trade without taking a loss, right? Okay. Okay. By the way, the first one of the things. This is a primary. One of the things we're going to talk about a lot of making money as a trader is primarily a function of analysis. That really isn't the case at all, what you're going to learn. In other words, trading is execution. Trading is execution. What you decide to do, of course, is analysis. And the problem is that it depends on what you're using your analysis for. If you're using your analysis to avoid the risk, then certainly making money is not a function of that because you will virtually consistently lose. But we're going to talk about that more in a little bit, okay? Okay. I have trouble getting out of a losing trade. Anybody here still have trouble getting out of a losing trade? Okay, that's fine. You won't have that trouble after today. I'm really, my goal is that when you walk out of here, you will understand in no uncertain terms that there was absolutely no reason to hang on to what you will define in advance as a losing trade. Do you find yourself planning trades you never execute and executing trades you never planned? That's a pretty common thing that affects most traders. There's always a cost associated with finding out what the market may do next. It's good to think that. That means you're accepting the risk. That there's a certain amount of, cost meaning a certain amount of risk involved in finding out what the market may do next. If I were to thoroughly analyze my trading results, I would find that my average losing trade is much bigger than my average winning trade. Well, a few people in here that might still be falling in that category. It only takes one trade